Welcome back to the channel. All right, it's time for the January update. This is going to be the 37th edition. We've been doing this for over 3 years. Semi-annually, we do the best of the top 10s, the top 20s in each class. In December, we had a monumental step forward. Even though the tier list was phenomenal, in my opinion, when we started assigning numerical scores based on our experience, I talked with the Spreadsheet Wizards, and we were able to take this up another notch thanks to the MCoC Illuminati and the Spreadsheet Wizards. We put a ton of work and time into this, filling out the sheet. Now, if you're like, I don't understand, I did do a whole separate video on how to use the sheet, the emoji explanation, the legend explanation, but essentially you are going to be able to configure the sheet based on how you're playing the game. Like, look, if Battlegrounds is not important to you, you unclick Battlegrounds and the ratings change. You don't like Alliance War? Get rid of it, fine. Get rid of ease to use and bye-bye. They go away. Like I said, there's a whole separate video for this and that will be linked in the description. Also, of course, the spreadsheet will be linked in the description. You do want to watch that video at least once so you have an idea on how to use it properly. It's simple. The Spreadsheet Wizards did the work for you to make it simple, but you still do want to watch it so you can understand what's going on here. Now, for the sake of the video, we're going to remove the ease of use score. You can obviously go and use that and add that on your own when you decide to do it. And if you're like, dude, thanks, I'm here for the video, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit like. Pick at least 1 to 2 Illuminati members. Go subscribe to them. Get better at the game by watching their videos as well. And then see and shout out and thank those Spreadsheet Wizards, the Adams there, when you get a chance. All right, it feels good to be able to jump straight into a tier list video. I'm so glad I made the separate video. So we don't have to do that every single time. We're going to talk about the champions that have the microphone. So let's get to it. Let's go for it. We've got the tier above all. Those are the best champions. Those are the best champions, okay? The first champion we're going to talk about in Mystic is Diablo. Diablo has the microphone because you saw me pull him in December, and I immediately took him to rank 2. Now, I loved Diablo when he was buffed, but then he kind of I don't really think he fell out of the meta as much as just other Mystics started being played more in Battlegrounds and in War. And then, you know, we saw in Battlegrounds him coming back up, being able to take a lot of the meta defenders and things like that. And I could not be more happy with my rank 2. And the reason why I have the sign there for him is because I think it's surprising some people, but also just so a little peek behind the curtain, when we filled all this out, the spreadsheet that was created by the Spreadsheet Wizards, I put in my own ratings. Like I went through every single champion you see here and gave them my own ratings, and I did not look at where they would end up in their tier list. I just gave them their ratings based on their scores in the categories. And Diablo actually originally was in the tier above all. Now, of course, I did multiple reads through. I did multiple looks through. I did multiple analysis. The Illuminati looked at this. I believe Aiden was one of the folks who called it out. And actually, Adam himself called it out too. Like, you sure on Diablo? And I did go back, and there was 2 categories that I did adjust slightly, and they were enough to move him to the top shelf. Now, one that shows you how great the top shelf is. Okay, if a champion's in the top shelf, they're phenomenal. If they're in super premium, they're really good too. But because of that, he fell to the top shelf, and I wanted to call it out for those 2 reasons. One, he's great. If you pulled him and you don't realize or you don't think he's good, check that out again. Maybe check the link to some videos that I've made and some other people here. And then 2, I would not be surprised if he's in the tier above all in the next couple of months, is that now that we have him at 7 stars, we start playing him more and we realize just how powerful he is in today's game and meta. Moving on to Kushala. She's phenomenal. She's great. I'm sure you guys all know. I got to help be part of the design process there with my incredible friend, DLL, who appears to design nothing but phenomenal champions that we love playing. The reason she's there is because she's another example. Her and Diablo actually were both in the tier above all when I did my initial ratings, the initial run through. She then fell down. Agatron kind of called out a couple of things, and I appreciate that. It may help me check my own bias because obviously I love playing her. She does have a very high skill ask. We talked about her length. I've done the essentials video on her. I've done my rank up, rank 3 video on her. I've used her in high tier war. I do think her awakened ability would be really helpful in some of those extremely tough war fights. There's been multiple times where I've kind of wished I had it. But again, I'm still happy with my unawakened 7-star rank 3 Kushala. I have no regrets there whatsoever. She's phenomenal. She's great. She's going to get even better when she is awakened. And I would not be surprised if in the coming months we see her moved up to the tier above all as well. Now, every month we're going to talk about the new champions, the buff champions. Today we're going to talk about White Tiger, and I have made some notes on her because I wanted to get this out because she's a unique one. I know her kit can look and appear a little bit simple, and it is by today's standards, but There's a long history with this champion designer of creating phenomenal, like I mean phenomenal, some of my favorite champions to play, some of your favorite champions to play, that appear to have relatively simple kits. So there's a great track record here, right? There's a great track record. So I'm pumped up on this one. She's got Nullify immunity. That's a big deal. In the Mystic class, off the top of my head, I can't think of another champion who has that. High skill Ash, though. I do want to make that clear. I don't think you're going to be 5-hit comboing, parry, heavy, that sort of thing. This is an Archangel, okay? So I want to make that really clear. These eye-popping numbers, some of these videos you're going to see, I do think there's a pretty high skill ask on what's going on in the fight, manipulating your opponent's power bar. How's your power steal going to work out? She's got that great power steal. Her flow is very good. You know, for those who aren't familiar, flow is like how difficult it's going to be for a node set, a defender, an AI to interrupt what she's trying to do. How well do her abilities actually fit together, right? It's kind of like making a product that's more than its individual pieces. I feel like she definitely is when you're able to play well. She's clearly a really nice Hulkling counter with her bleed, the way it interacts with the Nullify Indestructible, and then the getting rid of the healing afterwards. And I think Mike even showed that in the deep dive, which was great. The fact that she can lock out of her special 3, that's a really big deal for a lot of Mystics, especially those of you who run Mystic 5 out of 5. Mystic Dispersion like I do can be really helpful. So I like that too, especially the champion like her who has the ability to gain a lot of bursts of power, which could feel out of nowhere if you're not able to really stay on your toes there. So I love that too. I think she has a heavy mechanic that allows you to throw the SP3 should you want to use it. And it does have uses as well. And then her ability to reduce unblockable ability accuracy by 100%. So that means there's going to be nodes, and we're seeing that a little bit. I think it's to counter Magneto and Archangel, not specifically, but well, actually kind of specifically in nodes and wars and things like that. So if the node does not allow, if it's got like force of will, or for some reason the defender has increased ability accuracy, that unblockable may still happen. But the fact that she can turn that off, it feels like she's really well suited for right now. Obviously in the past, and then where Cosmic seems to be heading, because we've got some of these power gain things going on. We've got obviously very nicely targeted against Hulkling, and then reducing that unblockable. So that's something we're seeing in Cosmic class and in nodes. I'm a big fan. I feel very comfortable with this rating. I don't see her becoming a tier above all champion, but we'll see. That's kind of something we've seen with kits like this a little bit too, where it's a little harder to predict exactly they're going to be usable, and then we start to play them and realize like how incredibly powerful they are. But I feel very comfortable with her in the top shelf. I don't see her falling down. Could happen maybe A tier. There's a reason why we've got the dice emoji there for her. It's new, but that's where I see her. I'm extremely excited for her to come into the game. She's unique. She's new. I do think she's progressing the game forward really well. And I do think she's going to have a slight amount of defensive value potentially for your Battlegrounds players. I don't think she's going to be purely a offensive attacking champion. And then you can see we've got the super premium, and call tiers for these classes. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Mutant. Moving on to Mutant. Now, the first champion we're going to talk about is relatively new Onslaught. Now, I know I did the video saying he's the first one that made me really want to remind the community that a champion could be rebalanced down. We haven't had it. I haven't predicted that yet. In fact, multiple times I went on the record saying, like, I don't think this champion is going to get nerfed. They didn't. And that's because I felt like they were hitting their goals, or if they were superseding them, they were superseding them in ways that weren't going to materially reflect or hurt the balance of the game. Onslaught, I don't think he's going to like necessarily hurt the balance of the game, but I do wonder if he's going farther than was intended. I could see how this could very easily happen. He's supposed to clearly be a powerful defender, but he just turns off. He like automates the turning off of so many nodes. I've gotten my own, I've ascended my own, I've used my own. He's incredibly powerful. Now, I'm not saying I think for sure he's going to get nerfed, and I hope he doesn't get nerfed. I think there's ways around it. We know that he doesn't like turn off cleanse, which is that the skill class has been adding, and obviously I assume that could be added to nodes and things like that. So he's not like just turning everything off. I'm not predicting a nerf, but I did want to bring that up. But I also do feel very confident that he deserves to be there. And in many ways, for me personally, like I see the rankings, he's the best mutant in the game. He's the best mutant in the game over Kitty Pryde. I rank him over Kitty Pryde. I would rank the 7-star, should I get it, over a 7-star Kitty Pryde, even if a 7-star Kitty Pryde came to the game. All right, let's go and move on to the top shelf. We're going to talk about Apocalypse really quick. And the reason why I want to talk about Apocalypse is because this just shows you part of the amazing functionality of this sheet. If you remove Battlegrounds, look what happens to Apocalypse. He moves up to the top. He is incredibly, incredibly powerful. He's just not fast. And as a result, he's not able to be a powerful attacking champion in Battlegrounds. And all he really brings to the table defensively is having a large health pool, but it's not enough to really slow him down or to slow down attackers, especially because tech and other classes are just hard countering mutants. It's more a symptom of mutants and things like that. But again, that's part of what I wanted to show off and why you really do want to look at this. And I think listen to the tier list as we go through it, but then make sure you configure it to the way you're playing the game. The ratings are there. Apocalypse is a phenomenal, phenomenal champion. Moving on to Weapon X, I kind of wanted to call out and show Battlegrounds is influencing the scores significantly. This happened above with Kindred as well. That's why that emoji is there. Not just to show you that they're powerful in Battlegrounds. I have a whole separate tier list video for Battlegrounds. And if you're interested in Battlegrounds, I think that's really smart to watch. It's helped me climb the Battlegrounds tiers very, very well as I rank up champions with Battlegrounds in mind. And Wolverine Weapon X is a champion where if you remove Battlegrounds, he's actually going to fall. He's very good. I enjoy playing him, and we're finding out he's actually a very hilariously good Bullseye counter. And we'll get to Bullseye when we get to skill. But I did want to point that out. He is a good champion. He doesn't fall tremendously, but his Battlegrounds value is part of why you're seeing him so high up, and that's why he's got the crossed swords. Next, we're going to talk about Danny Moonstar. She's the recent buff for this month, and I will get a standalone video out on Danny Moonstar. I do think she's highly powerful. I think her ability set is very good. Another little peek kind of behind the curtain here when we're creating the general scores. One of them is like champion budget, meaning like how many abilities are there? What utility and abilities are they taking to the node now or to the fight? She has the highest score possible, in my opinion. She has a passive slow. Slows are incredibly, incredibly powerful. And the fact that it's passive is a big deal, right? Because then even nodes that are struggling and things like that aren't going to get rid of it. She also has a falter mechanic. Falter mechanic is another one that I think of as being highly, highly valuable. Any sort of miss mechanic, because it allows you to create opening, not just allowing you to get away from some of the chip damage, block damage that we're all taking a little too much, in my opinion, as of late. But it can also help you with like champions like Korg or things like that if you need to punish with a medium or a light, and she's got that. Now, the reason why she's not higher up is because she's also incredibly difficult to play, and I have her with a flow score being very, very low. There's a ton of abilities that you need to line up perfectly, and if you make one little mistake or the AI does not play into you, she can fall apart, and she can fall apart fast. So it really does make sense to me that her scores and things like that, or her fights, are very impressive. I have a ton of impressive fights I can show you. I also, though, make sure to show you that there's fights where she falls apart and crumbles. She's a good champion. If you enjoy playing her, I think she is well worth ranking, but you do really want to play her and make sure you know what you're getting into before you go ahead and do that. Moving on to Storm. The only reason why I've got Storm here is we're seeing how incredibly powerful, we're reminded of how incredibly powerful she is, thanks to the current raid situation, and then also with Necropolis. She's really good in that, but you gotta play her extremely, extremely well. She's a powerful champion. I don't think she has a ton of meta relevance, despite what those two things I just said. One, Necropolis is gonna go away. I believe long form will continue to be coming out, which is part of why it is valued on this tier list. But we don't know what. We don't know what defenders, and we don't know what nodes and those sorts of things. And then also raids is something we do once a month, and it's very early on in its iteration. So I wouldn't rank up Storm just for raids because we just don't know what's going to happen. All right, let's go ahead and move on to science. Moving on to science, we're going to go ahead and talk about Photon. Now, when I did the top 10s or the top 15s or whatever, just the best in the class in December, quite a few of you commented, you're like, come on, dude, Photon. And one of the things that was cool about going back and doing all of these ratings over and breaking it down was I kind of came up with, and there was a reason why I was saying, or I'd been saying, like, I think she's a perfect champion for our game. But when we looked at this, her offensive use is really good. It is really high. She is a little bit more targeted. I don't think she's as general as, say, like Titania, right? And I think if you remove the battleground score, I believe Titania will go ahead of Photon. And a lot's due to Photon being such a powerful, powerful defender. But I did want to point out, she's been promoted. I do think she deserves to be here. I think she's incredibly well made. She's not overly fast, but once you can get her ramped, Her damage can be great. And she's just so well tailored to fighting some of those mystics and things like that, which is what science class hopefully is doing. So the reason Spider-Ham, as we move to the top shelf, which is the second tier, the reason Spider-Ham has the microphone is because he, for me, is the ideal, perfect example of what I mean by flow. His abilities are just there when you need it. You're playing him, and you got to know how to play him a little bit, but the AI can't mess with you as much as it can in other places. Something just kind of going wrong doesn't ruin everything. Your special 1 and your special 2 both have value. I like his special 1. And I think his special 1 having value is incredibly helpful to having the good flow, now that I'm thinking about it in that way. And so I just wanted to kind of point that out. Anyone who's played Spider-Ham and you think about like how rare it is that you find yourself in like trouble or having to restart the whole cycle or something like that, that's what 5 out of 5 flow looks like. Moving on to Red Guardian, I want to make this clear. This is based on his buff. Okay, that's not yet live. In fact, I had a little bit of hesitation even putting this, but I've covered the buff. And this is what Kabam has now had as his like second buff, his second iteration, right? I did the video on the first one, and I think his long form honestly was even shocking me. I don't think it's what they intended. It was pretty clear. So they have decreased or nerfed what it appears to be his long form value will be, but in a way they actually did buff what his short term will be. And that's where I believe his goals lie, is in war and in battlegrounds. I think he's going to be phenomenal. And yeah, having buff immunity is also incredibly valuable. Like we've talked about the miss mechanics and things like that, and any sort of power gain. Well, he's buff immune, phenomenal. He's got the slow and the ability to deal a large amount of damage quickly. These are all things that get you high scores. And moving on to Morbius, wanted to add the microphone next to Morbius because I just purely wanted to call out. I believe that Campo has been showing us some of Awakened Morbius and how well he's doing against champions who are bleed immune. And I think he still has a relatively low sig. So it's just about getting up that vicious buff and then getting, I think it's a rupture now. Morbius is very, very effective. I know I thought he was going to need a very high sig to reach those levels. Apparently the answer is no. And then you can see the rest of the science class. Let's move on to tech. Moving on to tech, the first champion we're going to talk about is the tier above all. This is a promotion. Shocker. I don't think this shocks anyone. I pulled him in December, immediately took him to rank 2. Phenomenal champion, smooth, easy to use, absolutely great flow, has very good utility. Doesn't appear chock full of abilities, right? But once you start to play him, you're like, oh yeah, non-critting, this and that. He's really, really great. So exceptionally well made. The passive stun off of the SB2 allows you to, I think, go against, not against the class will, that's not the right word, but go like outside of pure class will. He's not just mutant attacker. He's good against mutants. But it's not just that. He can go outside of it. It's phenomenal for battlegrounds. I don't believe he's going to be great for long form content, right? There's the SB3 and the Energize that comes off of it. And then we're starting to see ways of utilizing his heavy without just going to the special 2. So it could happen in theory. But ultimately, this is just someone you're going to be questioning with, someone you're going to be doing battlegrounds with, someone you're going to be doing high tier war with. And I already have a ton of people in my alliance who've been doing it. I took mine to rank 2, and they immediately took him for alliance war defense. But that's okay. That's okay. He got some kills, helped us get 4th in the world, and that's where he's up. I can't wait. I love him. I love him. I love him. He's currently my 3rd favorite champion to play in the game, right behind Kushala and America Chavez. Moving on to the top shelf, I want to call out Iron Man because a lot of you know I'm a big fan of Iron Man. I've been doing videos on him, and I've been calling him like not a 1-for-1 Nimrod replacement. I don't think one will ever exist. But a lot of what you were using Nimrod for, I do believe Iron Man can do. I've even been getting questions about, does he need to be awakened? I think if you've got the 7-star and you're looking for in-game content, no, I don't think he does. I would rank 2 mine in a heart. I would rank 2 1 in heartbeat if I had him, and I would love to get him. I'm very much considering ascending my 6-star rank 5 Sig 200 because that's how much I like him. In high tier 1 Alliance War, if you're not familiar, tier 1 War has become incredibly punishing. And so he's a little bit more limited to like class advantage matchups, but almost everyone is. And he can go outside of it. There's some fights that have gone outside of it. I'll show you some of the Iron Man fights in the video I'm going to put out before the next war season comes. But outside of that incredibly punishing tier 1 war, he's just phenomenal, and you can use him elsewhere. He's even got some little things to help against mystics and things like that. one of my absolute favorite champions to play, I guess right behind Shocker. Tech has really moved up in prestige, in my opinion, having done all of this and really thought through and assigned numbers to everyone. Moving on down. Oh, and I would not be surprised to see him move to the tier above all in the next few months. Moving down, I did want to call this out because I know if you're a longtime viewer, you're like, Vega, how can you possibly have Captain America Sam Wilson there? Well, I will admit when I was wrong. I will do it. I want to get information out. I want to get my honest opinion. And I had been giving my honest opinion. And I still think he's a little on the noodle side of things. But there is a tremendous amount of utility. I do think that utility is a little difficult to get out. But I have to admit, I'm in SSX and I've been seeing Bitter Steel and seeing what he's been doing as Captain America, Sam Wilson, and I am aware of how much utility is there. And I'm also aware of how much that utility is being asked for. Like if you think about like even champions like Onslaught and things like that. And I do think Onslaught is at a point where he's someone you want to account for, even in questing. So it makes sense. I think he deserves to be there. I think if you want to rank up your Cap America Sam Wilson, I think he fits. And honestly, this was something we talked about off and on. Is some of the Illuminati was saying like he shouldn't even have that high skill ask, because they were saying if you play him relatively simply, you get really good results. It's just going to take a little bit longer. So don't be surprised if that comes down. And if that comes down, he's actually probably going to move up in the top shelf. I cannot imagine a scenario where he ever ends up in the tier above all. But I do need to respect that he is very well made. He is an excellent champion. And if you're not expecting large bursts of damage and things like that, I think you're pretty happy with your Captain America Sam Wilson. And that is it for the tech class for January. Let's go ahead and move on to skill. Moving on to skill, we've got to talk at least a little bit about Chilth. I know I talked about her extensively in December, and I know a lot of you saw those videos, which is great. But I do just want to confirm that even after we continue to dive in more into the rankings, the rating system, the spreadsheet by the atoms, kind of separating out how we're going to rate all these champions, she actually moved up. It wasn't so much like we came out with lower scores for Kingpin or Nick Fury. It was more that Chilth was even better. And a lot of that was due to her being stress tested in Tier 1 war. People like Simula and, of course, Bitter Steel were using their Chilths to do phenomenal results. Guys, I believe it was Rai and others were using their Chilths in Battlegrounds. She's even a tough defender. So all that added up to this. She's even good on long-form content. You can see she's got the emoji there. I desperately was hoping to pull one from the 7-star Titan Crystal, and I got trolled over pretty hard recently. I will consider ranking up my 6-star rank 5 and ascending her now that we've got so much Ascension dust. I think it'll just be a matter of if I get a 4-5 generic or a skill gem. She's phenomenal. She's great. She's well suited for the game is now and clearly where it's headed. And a lot of those, actually check out those videos. A lot of them are without her even being awakened. Moving on, we're going to talk about our second new champion of the month, which is Bullseye. I did live stream test him. I was kind of prepared to not enjoy him. I thought he was going to be a bit more rigid, and he really surprised me. I actually really enjoyed playing him. He's obviously a defensive nightmare. Right now, the only true counter appears to be Iceman and maybe Onslaught if you can time the heavy into heavy interaction well and play Bullseye well around his evade and things like that. So that's there. No one's debating that. Offensively, I kind of liked him. He's got that evade mechanic. It's not as powerful, in my opinion, of course, as a falter these days. But anything like that, like with Elsa Bloodstone or things where it can allow you to avoid taking chip damage and create an opening for you, you do want to make sure you get the Fury off the SP2, right? We kind of tried playing around with them in various ways, but we realized you got to get the Fury, and that makes sense. It is a large source of attack value and things like that. And then as we showed on the stream, there was a lot of value to having the instant bleeds as opposed to an overall strong bleed. I thought his flow was really good. I thought he was very, very well designed as far as I think it was like one SB1 into the SB2, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was go straight to the SB2 and then kind of come in and finish off with the SB1. He seems suited for Battlegrounds. He's obviously not going to be, I'm looking at the champions right next to him. He's not going to be your Mantis, your Mole Man, Black Cat sort of, or Masakre, quick scores, but his damage seems very, very reliable. I'm happy with my 6-star, and if I got a rank 4 gem or skill, I honestly don't know if I would give the rank 5 gem to Chilth or Bullseye first. I'd have to think that through, including with Kingpin. So I really like him. I do. If you've got him, I'm very curious on your thoughts on him. Moving on, I want to talk quickly about Black Cat. She is skyrocketed up. Now she's got the relic emoji, and I want to call that out. That's that Black Widow relic. I happen to have a 6-star one, but I've been playing her and I'm just refamiliarizing myself with Black Cat. So I still have a lot to learn with her, but it just feels like there's more and more nodes, more and more ability sets that we can turn off with her, and the damage skyrockets. I don't know if I've just become better as a player or if we as a community have become better as players, or a little bit of both. But I don't think she's nearly as scary to play as she once was. And then that is it for skill. Feel really good about the skill class. Let's move on to Cosmic. All right, moving on to our final class of Cosmic. I loved this because, again, if you've been paying attention to my channel long enough, you know that I have said for a very long time, even when a lot of people were like, Cosmic's the best class in the game, Cosmic's the best class, I was like, no, I don't think they are. I think the most top heavy. I think their first 3, or maybe their first 4, or maybe the best collective first 4 in the game, but they fall off a cliff fast. And going and rating them and showing this to a bunch of really smart players, it seems like we agree when we look at the totals. We'll talk quickly about Hercules. I just want to kind of use that to mention. I mean, he's phenomenal. I do think in many ways he's the best champion in the game. And if you add ease of use, he shows up there. But then if you look at like battlegrounds and things like that, it starts to change. And that's kind of cool, where you see like the modes can start to slowly chip away. And I mean slowly, because he is phenomenal. Let's be honest with ourselves. And then move on to Null. I just want to do a quick shout out to Null, because I think the guy never quite gets his due, because he's not as bluntly powerful as those other 4. He's just not. In my humble opinion, but he's close and he's really good. And with the right mode or matchup, he does end up in the same spot or produce similar results. He's also incredibly unique in the class. I like that about him, but I just couldn't justify scores that would move him up any higher. If the game progresses and we see that he should be, we'll move him. And one of the things that's pointing in that direction for me is that every single day in AQ, outside of raids, I take a fight against a Red Skull. And when Red Skull got his buff, I needed to actually readjust my team because Red Skull is that annoying. And Null just handles him. Null's removing those armor ups. His medium cancels out evade and auto block. So even if Red Skull throws his SB1, which is typically the one you want to bait, and he gets that auto block, it doesn't matter. And then when you remove those armor ups, you can then parry Red Skull safely. And Null just handles it like a boss. He's not like super fast, so I think that's part of it, right? His battleground score isn't amazing, but he's a good dual threat. He's just a really well-made, very powerful Cosmic champion that's a little bit unique and different than the rest of the class. I think if we get some more Nulls, Cosmic will be really, really well situated. And as much as I love tier above all champions, I really like my top shelf champions too. And I hope we get more of them out of the Cosmic class as time goes on. Gladiator buff. Anyways, moving on. Well, we've also got Adam Warlock. The reason why I've got the microphone right next to him is he is a perfect example of a champion who has tremendous ability score, right? We talked about that, where what's in their kit, how many of these things lining up, the immunities, like True Strike, ability to create openings, power gains. He is very, very powerful, but his flow score hurts him badly. Anyone who's played Adam, this was like the complaint or the negative to him immediately, was any sort of AI disruption just shuts him down. And that's flow. And it's important to reflect that in champions. The cool thing is he's still so good and he is well made that this is where he ends up. I think it's really like a personal choice. Like, do you enjoy that or not? He's good. He's bluntly very, very powerful, and he's very, very well made. If I pulled one, I would rank it. So that's it. Like I said, Gladiator buff. And so I'm really looking forward to covering that when that all happens and we get those details. But that is the tier list. Let me know what you think. I absolutely love it. I think this is going to be so helpful to so many people in the community. This functionality here, being able to remove battlegrounds, move Alliance War, add easy use. And one thing I wanted to point out is I think with the Mutant class, They're very, very strong. I think Mutant's going to be a really interesting one to see develop and evolve over 2024, because when you remove Battlegrounds and Alliance War, you see how good they are as far as like what's in their kits, how well made they are, how powerful they are as far as the abilities that are there, how good their flow is. The thing is, they just haven't been getting updated like the rest of the classes. And so they're not updated for the nodes or for the tech class or things like that. And tech just shuts them down. So those PvP modes, they're not doing as well. But when we go out in PvE, outside of some new nodes and things like that, they're still holding their own. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, let me know what we got right. Let me know what we got wrong. And let me know how you're liking this new spreadsheet. I hope it's working out perfectly for you. It will constantly be updated, and we will continue doing this monthly, just like we have for the last 3 years. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.